Hey, it's Celtics Lakers time. The rivalry renewed, and I am going to talk about it with the Locked On Lakers in a crossover podcast right now.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Rain and J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics, pod, home of the winners. B.
Thanks once again to Be Ever Ready for the new theme music. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. It is free and available everywhere, including YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate you making Locked On Celtics part of your daily routine. You can get every episode at LockedOnCeltics.com. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, available now wherever books are sold. I've got a book signing coming up in Plainville and an unlikely story. If you want to do that, that's Thursday, the 9th. If you're in the area, please come by. I can sign your book for you. Today's episode is brought to you by TrueBill. TrueBill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you do not want or need. And they can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. The Boston Celtics are getting ready to play the LA Lakers. And so let's just get into the conversation here. Locked On Lakers, Locked On Celtics crossover episode, talking about history, talking about the Celtics, talking about the Lakers and their issues. So right now, here we go.
Hey, John, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. This is our first, Andy. This is our first like genuine crossover episode here on the net. We've had network guests on, but never like what they call a crossover episode. And now I can see why. It's because, here we are to talk about the Lakers versus the Celtics. And if you're watching on YouTube, you notice that the network background for crossover episodes is supposed to be a neutral thing, something where we're on even footing. It's green. Just green. Another sign that everybody hates the Lakers.
On the bottom there, that little... There's the yellow there.
Looks a little more Suns orange than Lakers gold.
Well, we'll call it, it's not the Forum blue and gold, but it's, I think actually the network colors are patterned after the old Sonics. I think that's where the actual color scheme comes from.
Well, that is true. Neutral site.
That's very as neutral site as you can get in the league right now.
Hashtag never forget.
I'm just wondering, like Andy and I were talking about this a little earlier too. We were trying to there was a stretch where, obviously Lakers Celtics defined the NBA. Of course, Lakers Celtics 7:00 tonight at Staples Center. And then a long time when it was completely irrelevant, like for anything other than, people who just wanted to look back on the Showtime era and the Bird Celtics and all that. Yep. It was revived with the two finals, but it's been a decade. Like, what does Lakers Celtics resonate now in Boston? Because I just think it's an interesting question.
I think for Celtics fans, it's always going to be something that's a little extra special, right? Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter the record. When you're a really true diehard Celtics fan, when the Lakers come to town, there's a little something extra. The building does feel different. ESPN came in and they brought like 24 people. They had everybody there. The media room was crazy. We ran out of food. Like it was crazy for that game. But you can see it in the stands. You can see it. There are a lot of Lakers jerseys in there. People are a little extra rowdy. So I think while it doesn't have the same cachet, I think league wide when we're both kind of covering teams that are middling around 500 at the moment. It's still, I think, within our little spheres. I think it's still a special thing.
Yeah, what I always think about that I find interesting with this, because obviously for whatever it means to the fans is up to the fans, and the fans decide that, if you're somebody that just loves the tradition, that's the way you're going to be about this, regardless of where the teams are at. But I remember years ago when Brian and I were covering the Kobe Powell era Lakers, Kobe talking about how before that 2008 finals that you guys won, and then a couple of years later, the Lakers won. But before that, Lakers Celtics didn't really mean anything to him as a player. Like, and this is somebody like Kobe knew the Laker history backwards and forwards, is a
Yeah.
big reason he wanted to be a Laker as a kid. Kobe could have been a basketball historian if he wanted to. But he always said, like, for a rivalry to truly mean something for the players, it can't be, either manufactured or just like tethered to history. Like, from his perspective, when he came into the league, the Celtics and Lakers were never really good at the same time. So, like the Kings and Spurs, like those were the games that got him up more personally than Lakers Celtics until he experienced that in '08. And then once he experienced then, he was like, okay, now I truly get it. And all of that explains why he frankly wigged out during the 2010 game 7, just because I mean, he said afterwards, like the weight and the magnitude of all of that, even for somebody like Kobe, who has been there, done that as anybody in the league, it still was like, holy crap. This is Lakers Celtics game 7.
Game 7.
Yeah. I mean, there's really nothing to me in basketball quite like Celtics Lakers game 7. And so, that's it's still to me. And again, I'm an old guy, so I remember I cut my teeth on Celtics Lakers in the '80s. Like Bird Magic was.
Wow, you are old.
I am old. Yeah, I was a teenager when the Celtics, like '86. I was 13 years old. So that run of basketball, like greatness, is I think that's where the league turned back around. Obviously, I think Magic and Larry saved the NBA from the '70s kind of cocaine fueled labor issues and all of that stuff.
You make it sound so bad, John.
I know. I was like, saved it from what? That sounds great.
Some would call that a party, John.
Well,
all right, Debbie Downer.
Sure.
Look who's the hall monitor over there in Boston.
Yeah. Well, but anyway, I think, look, when what sells it for me is when players come in and they'll say things like, and I get where Kobe was coming from. You get up for the games against other good teams. When you're good, you're not getting up for when one team's good and one team's bad. That's not a real rivalry. You're coming in to get your ass kicked. But when both teams are on equal footing, either both bad or both good or both in the middle, where the Celtics and Lakers are, it still ends up the potential for a really good game. And it does bring back some of those memories. And some of these players that come into Boston, whether they're traded or free agents or maybe even from other teams, you can say, whatever. It's Boston. It's old and stodgy and whatever. Then you walk in and you see the banners and you stand on the parquet. And it's the same thing when you walk into Staples and you see the banners and you stand on the floor and you see that big logo there and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, this
new players talk all the time, John, about how the first time they go into the Lakers practice facility and they see all 17 of those trophies and the banners, and it really is like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And the Celtics have that in their facility too, up on one end, all replica banners there. You walk in, it's like, whoa. I got work to do.
Do the banners still hold up? Because so few of them are from the modern era. Boom!
Ooh! Wow!
Look at that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. No, and here's more fuel for you.
Please ignore the titles the Lakers won in Minneapolis as I make that joke.
Yeah, no, I know. That was going to be my comeback. That the city of Boston still has 17 championships, and the city of Los Angeles only has 11. So, but actually, the answer is no, that they don't hold up, because the original ones are on display in the Boston Public Library right now, and they're all like smoke stained, kind of old cotton, like the old garden where people used to smoke, not just like the cigars, the red Arback cigars, and all that wafted up to the rafters, and that just soaked it, just nicotine tinged.
Oh, John, you're describing in my mind just a wonderful the idea that everywhere you could go, like everywhere you walked into, you got your nicotine fix. no matter no matter what the
Like
setting.
if you went to your physician and your physician wasn't smoking, you went and picked a different one. Like,
yeah,
I don't trust my non-smoking doctor. I got to go to a better one.
I love it. I mean, it's like, it's always, you guys watch Always Sunny?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When Dennis tells Mac, I swallowed a couple of apple seeds. He says, smoke a cigarette. It'll keep the toxins down. Like that's the type of medical advice that you used to. I remember, like, I in my research for my book, like you find old commercials and old magazine ads, and there's Bob Cousy with a cigarette saying, I recommend such and such a brand cigarettes. And you're like, oh my God, these professional athletes are sitting there saying like, hey, this cigarette is what gets me through.
Well, it was either take the cigarette endorsement or get it like a third job as a carpenter. Like these guys didn't have a lot of options back then.
There was a funny story with Tommy Heinsohn with Red Auerbach. Tommy,
what was he complaining about?
Where so Tommy obviously used to smoke. It's the 60s. He used to smoke. And Red said, you got to quit smoking. We need you to be in better shape. So he quit the smoking and he put on like 15 pounds. And Red was like, just start smoking again because you got to be lighter. I'd rather take you lighter and wheezing a little bit. So just go back to your smoking. That's fine.
Yeah. Nobody ever called Vladdy fat.
Nope. All these pictures of these, like these Central European, like Dino Raja for the Celtics, just a Marlboro hanging off his lip.
Well, I mean, look, in those arenas, you might as well smoke because they're the arena itself is so filled with smoke that not smoking doesn't do you a lot of good.
You might as well just level it out from the outside and inside.
You're inhaling it anyway. You both of you said something that was I think key to the discussion about Tuesday's game. The rivalry means more when the teams are good, and both of these teams are in a position where they're supposed to be, and it hasn't gone according to plan. So let's get the lay of the land with both the Lakers and the Celtics. We'll do that next.
Coming back to continue the conversation with Brian and Andy Kamenetzky of the Locked On Lakers podcast, getting into some of the Celtics stuff, the Celtics issues, Jayson Tatum, and all of that. First, I got to tell you about TrueBill. You know why those free trials renew without you knowing it? Because it's a scam. It's a business tactic that lets greedy corporations pocket your money without you realizing it. Download TrueBill right now. Take control of your subscriptions. TrueBill is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for these subscriptions that you do not need, do not want, or the ones you simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with TrueBill. And because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, TrueBill makes it very simple. Just link your accounts and TrueBill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your TrueBill concierge is there when you need it to cancel them when you just can't get to it. So you don't have to do it. So I had a subscription renew and it almost cost me hundreds of dollars, but it cost me a lot of money, or it cost me a lot of time to get my money back. TrueBill would have made it a lot simpler. 2 million users have saved over $100 million with TrueBill. So do not fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now, truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show also brought to you by Theragun. Do not let the stress of daily life weigh on your body. Whether you're an elite athlete or somebody like me who tends to sit in a chair for most of the day, Theragun and its handheld percussive therapy can help you release your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combination of depth, speed, and power. It's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. The Gen 4 Theragun just doesn't feel good. It gets to the source of the pain by releasing the tension. And the Theragun signature percussive therapy goes 60% deeper than vibration alone. So whether you want to treat muscle tension from working out, an injury, or the stresses of the everyday life, there's no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4. A week ago, took a wrong step on a treadmill and triggered something in my back that laid me out. But the percussive therapy is something that really got me back on my feet a lot quicker than I have on the past. So it really can help you. Go to Theragun and try it for 30 days at only $199. It's at therabody.com/lockedon. Right now, get your Gen 4 Theragun today. Therabody.com/lockedon. Therabody.com/lockedon. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. why not make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen every day? Josh Lloyd will help you win your league. So check it out wherever you get your podcast and also on YouTube. Now let's get into the conversation from the Celtics perspective with the Kamenetzky brothers of Locked On Lakers.
All right, John. Okay, Andy and I talk all the time about where the Lakers are, or more specifically, where they aren't. Boston, you guys were, I believe, 4-6 and have gone 9-5 or 9-4, whatever the math is, since then. Is what was the problem? What turned around? And do you think there's a lesson in here that Lakers fans could latch onto that might make them feel better about where the Lakers are right now? Because it's not good.
Yeah. I don't think what happened for the Celtics is going to happen for the Lakers, because what happened with the Celtics is they turned up their defense and they became a really good defensive team. I think the last two games, and we're still in small enough sample size where you have a game where you give up, they give 137 to the Jazz, who shot like historically great in that game. And then they gave up another 110 or 117 to the Portland Trailblazers. So their defensive rating went from like 5th or 6th down to 10th. But they had, at the beginning of the season, their defensive rating was in the 20s. And then they built it up to like 5 or 6. And what happened was early in the season, they were switching just a ton. And Ime Udoka wanted to instill in them the ability to just switch. And it was something that was foreign to everybody. So we just did this. I've been calling it immersion therapy. He said, we're just switching everything. This is all we're doing. We're not changing. We're not going into drop. We're not switching 1 through 3. We're doing everybody switching. And everybody was just, it was like so overboard that it became like a huge story within the media. Like, are you really going to switch this much? Are you really going to put Robert Williams out there against every point guard? And once they started to really get the hang of that, he started to slowly involve other defenses. And now he's got traditional coverage, a little bit more non-traditional stuff, and they can go to kind of whatever they want and interchange. So I think the plan worked for Ime, and the Celtics have become a pretty good defensive team. Offensively, they're starting to kind of turn it around. Jayson Tatum, at the beginning of the season, was just missing everything. He was in the biggest funk of his life, and now he's starting to break out of that. So I think if as he goes, they go offensively. So I think it starts with them just really ratcheting up the defense, winning some games, staying in some games where defensively they had that 88-86 win over Philly, which was gross and disgusting, but that's how they've been winning some of these games.
What were you seeing specifically with Tatum that might explain just the struggles and why? I mean, looking at his splits, I mean, they are brutal, except for like the last 3 games heading into this one with the Lakers.
Yeah, I think with Tatum, he was being asked. First of all, I think he just starts slow in general now. And there were a lot of factors, like he was on Team USA and he had a short turnaround. So his offseason was a little bit different than a normal offseason. And I think he came in with a real kind of, I'm going to the rim mentality. But at the beginning of the season, the refs were really swallowing their whistles and he got super, super frustrated. And his complaining to the refs was out of control. And then you add to that, Ime has been asking him and pushing him to expand his game to be a playmaker. Really, when you get double teamed, just get off the ball fast, move, try to get it back, but really create for your teammates. And I think that I've been likening that to when you download a new app that eats a lot of processing power and you wonder why on the rest, like why isn't the rest of my stuff working as well as it used to on my phone? Like the processing power that it took to say, okay, now I've got to read this game and make these passes and these reads that he wasn't making before. Because now I got to do all this and then look for my shot. And I think that just, when you're not playing with a clear mind, I think things start to kind of, it's easy to fall into a little bit of a funk. You add all that other stuff in and it just exacerbated the problem and it just sent him down into a spiral. But to his credit, he did stick with it. And I think now that he's had a couple of games where he's hitting some shots, he's got that confidence back and he's still slinging some passes. He threw some passes against Portland that were like laser beams. So hopefully for the Celtics, this is something that can continue because Ime's challenging him to be basically an MVP candidate rather than a second or third team All NBA type of guy. So adding that element to his game, that element to his passing. If he can get the shooting back up and keep that passing and still play defense, like all of that stuff will make him the MVP candidate that every team needs to be a contender.
You mentioned how Ime Udoka challenged him to do that. How much do you think that registered with a guy like Tatum versus hearing it from Marcus Smart, who was basically saying the same thing publicly in a way that it became much more of a story?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming from your teammate, it's one thing to say like, yeah, we need you to do this, and there's like a yeah, whatever kind of element, I think, to that. But when it's the new coach and it's a guy that you've kind of co-signed, you had the Tatum rubber stamp on that. You kind of you owe it to him to say, all right, this is what you want. All right, I'm going to try this. And I think Tatum kind of knew coming in because he'd had that experience with Team USA. Ime Udoka was on the development staff on Team USA. And I think that he kind of knew what was coming. So like, this wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like Ime said, no, you just be yourself. And then he comes in like, psych, I want you to drop 10 assists a game. So I think he kind of had an idea that this was coming. And I think Marcus Smart just kind of, I mean, he's the longest tenured Celtic. He, might as well be a captain. And I think Smart had some other frustrations that were being kind of expressed in that, and it just came out as an outright criticism of Tatum. I think his anger was broader than that, but they seem to have squashed that because since then they've made a run and they've really been playing better basketball.
Well, and it's funny because like the Lakers, for all of what's gone wrong this year, and we'll probably get to that in the next segment, but like, um, LeBron, for example, after the Clippers game, the Lakers have not beaten very many good teams this year. Have they beaten any
Yeah.
really good teams, Andy?
They came close to beating Milwaukee.
Okay, that's good.
They came reasonably close to forcing overtime against Milwaukee.
Like they've won 12 games or whatever it is, but
they beat Miami. Okay, yeah, they beat Miami.
Did Miami was missing Jimmy Butler
for some of the game, not all of it. Some of the game.
You can see what we've been reduced to on this coast now with this team.
Yeah.
But like that, one of the like LeBron after the Clippers game, was talking about the centerless lineups when the Lakers really lean into going small and how much he likes those both offensively and defensively, and stopped and pointed out like, that said, I was garbage for these 6 minutes when we did it, and I have to be much better. Like, for all of their problems, they haven't had teammates yet kind of calling each other out. And I don't know if it's because LeBron hasn't been there, but they're handling it internally and all that kind of stuff. Or maybe it's just not something that is an issue with these guys in terms of, feeling that players are deficient in one way or another. I just wonder like if something like that is going on kind of under the hood, because there's the Westbrook thing, which undoubtedly LeBron and AD helped engineer, signed off on by management. Rob Pelinka loves stars just as much as those guys do. Like, this is their deal. Like, I don't know if the way the Celtics are constructed is quite the same way, where the players own what's been going on there in the same way that the Lakers players own what's going on with the Lakers.
Yeah, no, there's definitely not, like, Tatum is not pulling strings right now. And I think first of all, because he's not at a level where he can pull the same kind of strings that LeBron and Anthony Davis can. And I think because, I mean, he's only just starting to feel the weight of his powers, like he's just getting into his second contract, and he's been with this team from the beginning and had very strong kind of upper management leadership along the way, very stable franchise. And so I don't think he's ever felt the need to challenge. And they had early success. His rookie year, they went to the conference finals and nearly beat LeBron in a game 7. So I think early on he's kind of felt like, yeah, okay, this is part of it. Like, we're winning. We're winning playoff series. We're making some noise. We're not quite there yet, but we're so close. And so last season was the first really down season of Tatum, well, the Kyrie season as well, but they've hit a little bit of adversity, but it's the type of adversity that I think the Sacramento Kings would love to have.
Right.
So, that's so realistically, Tatum is not kind of in a position where he's like, you got to get me this guy and you got to get me that guy. You got guys. He's got guys. And he's not like he and Jaylen Brown aren't like going to movies together.
Right.
But they do like each other, and they're still trying to figure out how to work together a little bit.
Yeah.
This year, the first year without a Kemba, without a Kyrie. So I don't think there's that level
it's not the indictment. Like, if LeBron and those guys start complaining about the effort from somebody else in the big three, or, Avery Bradley says, LeBron's got to work harder, or whatever it is, it really becomes an indictment of
they're
themselves.
in such different position. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Before we let you shift things in the next segment for questions about the Lakers, got to ask, how's the Schadenfreude segment working for
how's
our alter Freund Dennis Schroder doing over in
Dennis
Boston?
Schroder? He's an interesting guy, an interesting player. He was great against Portland. He has these games where he's great. I'm curious to get your perspective on this. For a good portion of the season,
you can say he's weird, John. We spent all last season saying it. You can say it.
It felt like every time I thought, God, he didn't play well, he had good stats. And I was like, that's weird, because the eye test tells me that he didn't play well, but he had like 20. And then I say, wow, he really played pretty good. And then I look at his stats, I'm like, God, his box score looks like crap. For the first like 20 games of the season, it felt like inverse. Like whenever his box score was good, he played poorly to me. Was that like I think
it depends on it depends on what you want him to be doing. Like Schroder was not bad last year for the Lakers. He played extremely hard. He wasn't happy, and he clearly we've talked about the contract and all that kind of stuff at length, and he botched that deal. But like he wasn't the reason it wasn't a great fit, and all of that. But I just think it depends on what you want. If you want him to be a guy who is a point guard, he's not going to organize your offense. He's not going to make guys around him better and all. What he can do is score. And, if you want him to do that, if you want him to, we need a guy who can put up 20 tonight because Jaylen Brown is hurt. He was putting up 30 for you guys at different points. And he actually is a pretty, I think, interested defender. And so you can use him that way. I think he's just one of those guys that because he's so good at certain things, the expectation, the hope is he can be good at other things too. And he's not. And if you take him out of his lane, he's a relatively ineffective player, and the shortcomings are real obvious.
Well, this is something, John, that I hit on a lot during last season, and a big reason why I went from really approving and happy about the deal the Lakers made to acquiring him to kind of souring on it relatively quickly. I don't think Schroder is an ideal starting point guard. I think he is a super high-end six-man caliber player. And by the way, that's not a shot at Schroder. Guys like that are extremely important. Guys like that can be a key part of a true contending team. But I think the more you have him out there, with the responsibilities that you would ask of a starting point guard, the diminishing returns start to happen, because he's really a shooting guard who's way too small to be a shooting guard. So he kind of has to be a point guard, and he occasionally can distribute well, but the shortcomings that he has as a player, physical limitations, all that stuff start to come through more as a starter than as opposed to a six-man who's really just out there to get buckets and energize a team.
All right, I'll be back to wrap it up, get some answers about the Lakers when we come back. First, I got to tell you about Boost Mobile. You listen to podcasts for the power of the inside track. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money, because with Boost, you get the power of a free 5G phone so you can listen to the latest episodes of Locked On Celtics and keep up with your favorite players and teams. The power of 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line, so you can your family can share all the insights, and the power of one of America's largest 5G networks. You can do it all at the speed of 5G. With all that money you'll save and all that edge you'll gain, Just how powerful will you become? Switch to Boost Mobile and find out. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Free phone limited to new customers and one per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverages not available everywhere for all phones or networks. See boostmobile.com for details. Today's show is also brought to you by Crack Sauce, CRAIC. Crack Sauce is a local hot sauce made in Lowell by a Celtics season ticket holder and a wonderful staff over there. They grow their own peppers and source it from other local farms. This is a very great opportunity for you to support a local business and get this awesome hot sauce. It's not just a sauce that challenges how hot you can make food and it's meant to torture you. It actually gives you flavor, unique flavors that you can pair with different things that you make. I like to cook. I like to make different things. It's soup season. Weather's getting cold. You want hot soups. Some of these are really, really great. I used the 40 Shades for my chicken noodle soup, and it was great. It gives it just a hint of flavor, that green chili flavor, just enough heat to make it feel, you can feel it, but it's not going to overwhelm you. It's really great stuff. And again, it's a local company, so you're really supporting local people who are pouring their heart and soul into this product. Go to cracksauce.com, CRAIC sauce.com. You're going to get 10% off with the promo code Locked On. Give it as a gift. If you've got a hot sauce lover in your life and you're not sure what to get this person, this is going to be great. You're going to get 4 different flavors. Check them out at cracksauce.com, CRAIC sauce.com. Use the promo code Locked On for 10% off. So the thing with Schroder with the Celtics is, I think that was where Marcus Smart's kind of early season kind of angst was centered. But he's basically a temporary player here. I don't think there's any way that he signs with the Celtics next year. He's going to go make more money somewhere else, I think.
That's what he thought with the Lakers, so don't get ahead of yourself.
No, it's true.
Or he's going to make less money playing with the Magic next year, like, somehow.
Actually, I'm a proponent of trading Schroder if they can. My take on trading Schroder is some team out there is going to want to give something up for him. If you're in a pinch, you need that type of guy. I don't think it's unrealistic to ask for 2 second-round picks for a guy. Yes, he's a free agent, but yeah, if you want to sign him, you want to get a leg up and maybe have a chance to re-sign him or get that. He is a really good 6-man. You want to get that guy on, and then sure, two second-round picks. That opens up things for Peyton Pritchard to come in and be a backup point guard, and I think that settles things down a little bit for the Celtics. But let's flip things over to the Lakers, because obviously the big story with the Lakers is your starting point guard, and everybody knew that Russ was going to come in and have trouble right away. Is there any hope for you guys that Russ is going to follow a similar path like he has in the past, that slowly you're going to see, like we've seen a couple of halves from him where you're like, okay, all right, I'm seeing it. Do you see any level of consistency starting to creep into his game?
It's funny. Like, we've done Monday's episode of Locked On Lakers was LeBron needs to play better. Like, LeBron, I understand the injuries and all that kind of stuff. But when he's on the floor, he has not been good enough offensively and defensively. He hasn't been as good as he was last year, which is at the very least where the Lakers need him to be. With whether we did a whole episode last week about why AD needs to be better. Russ,
it's been a while since we've worried about Russ.
Yeah, like, he's been fine. Like, I think if you don't expect Westbrook to be, a top 5 kind of player, and he hasn't been that guy in a little while. His flaws are too big, but an all-star, first team, second team All NBA type, third team All NBA. He's been good. Russ is not their problem right now. I mean, like, that said, though, Andy, at least from my perspective, it's like the downstream effects of bringing Russ in are really the issues. It's not Westbrook's play, because he's been basically what you would expect and kind of want him to be. It's just all the stuff that you were worried about, that if you make this trade for what you gave up and what could go wrong, has gone wrong.
Yeah, we've reached a place now where assuming Russ maintains or even builds on this level of play, John, I think the question that you're going to be asking about the Lakers is ultimately whether or not doing this trade left the Lakers so shallow, and in particular when it comes to defense and the guys that they gave up to make it happen, or in not re-signing Alex Caruso because of financial implications. Like, that is ultimately how you would judge the trade, as opposed to what Westbrook himself is doing. Like the last 5, 8, whatever games, 10 games, Russ has actually been really good. Like, he'll have a bad quarter, a bad half, but like that happens to superstar level players. But on balance, Russ has been really good the last few weeks. Like he has not really been something that you're worrying about.
He's low key, very low key, not the problem.
I would say, if anything, John, because you're correct that the last few seasons, Russ has started out slow, then picked it up as he's gone along. I would say he's actually ahead of that schedule in terms of what I anticipated right now.
So the problem in the first game was when the Celtics decided, oh, we're just going to go to the rim. There was absolutely nothing you can do to stop it.
That is still going to be a live option for you guys Tuesday night. if Ime wants to just go ahead and put that as, let's try that first.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it will still work.
I remember being very upset on Twitter at like, guys, it's pretty clear what you need to do against these guys. Attack. And I remember Tatum settling for jumpers early on. I'm like, that you cannot do the Lakers this favor. And they call a timeout. I think Tatum got 2 early fouls. And I was like, this is actually a good thing, because Tatum's going to go reset on the bench. And Marcus Smart said, you know what? I'm just going to try this. And he just kept getting layups. And everybody's like, oh, okay. We can just conga line our way to the
yeah,
rim.
there's also there's a little play that a lot of teams have buried inside their playbook called the pick and roll that you guys can also use to attack the Lakers defensively.
Pick
just
and
yeah, you can write it out, or you can use an ampersand. It's really up to you.
Sometimes just the pick or the roll is enough. You don't even necessarily have
pick
to do
or
both.
roll.
So so here, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, and this is like our debate, kind of Monday, Andy and I, we both agree on the broad principle here that LeBron is not engaged enough, certainly defensively, on a possession to possession basis. And one of the things I'm just super curious about, and I'd love to go back and look at the film, is to what degree he's actually less engaged than he has been than the last couple of years. The difference being, you have Kyle Kuzma, you have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you have Alex Caruso, and screw you guys for not donating to the GoFundMe we had to try to, let the Lakers raise the revenue to keep Caruso around. But it's going to hurt a lot more in March. But like the stars take defensive plays off, particularly when they have to carry so much load offensively. It's not uncommon. LeBron does it. They all do it. But the infrastructure was there. So where, to whatever degree it was happening, it was less noticeable than it is this year, because there is no infrastructure around him this year. It's a bunch of guys who kind of can play offense. Andy, is there anybody who can kind of just play defense, or is it just guys who can kind of
play defense? I mean, Dwight.
Yeah. Okay. And that's it. And like, so when AD and LeBron aren't going 100%, and that's a problem, because LeBron isn't bulletproof anymore. And that's just, it's not how this trade was supposed to work.
Here's my thought coming into this season was to almost not even pay attention to what the Lakers are doing in the first even half of the season. I said, I might have said it on Locked On NBA a couple times. All the Lakers need to do is float around. I wouldn't be surprised if they floated around right where they are now. They're 6th. They're 12-12. And look, the rest of the West, the rest of the league, there's a lot of parity in the league. You can float around 7, 8, 9, and then March, turn it on. Like, LeBron is going to turn it on. Anthony Davis, you think Anthony Davis is going to take nothing but jumpers all season long? Like, no, I think most of these guys.
I don't know, John. I've seen this movie. He actually
we're in a bit of a dark place here, John, when LA hoops. A lot of things seem possible.
He's not going to take all jumpers, but he's going to take more jumpers than you would prefer. I mean, he's going to the rim.
Sure. I can't believe Celtics guy and coming in here to encourage Lakers fans, but I actually don't, from the outside 10,000 foot view, I actually don't. I'm not worried necessarily about the league. Now, I don't think they have what it takes to beat the top 3 in the conference in a series, which is a problem.
What kind of
I just don't.
comfort are you offering then? Like
But
they're
I
going to be a
do think.
lovely 5 seed? Like
But
They
I
have
think.
beaten the
I
Red
think.
Hot Rockets twice.
I think that after the All-Star break or somewhere around there, you're going to see some level of LeBron. I think these guys are sick of getting hurt late. I think Anthony Davis is sick of getting hurt late, and they're taking a new approach. We're going to coast through the beginning of the season. We're going to turn it on. We're not going to kill ourselves. LeBron's not going to kill himself trying to get an MVP at 35. He's not going to kill. I think that there's going to be a point later this season where the stories, ESPN's, The Athletic are going to be like, whoa, LeBron is back. Anthony Davis is back. And that's going to be enough to lift the Lakers. I think
well,
second half Lakers are going to be a much bigger force or a force.
okay,
They're not a
you
force.
could be correct, but here's 2 areas, John, where I'm going to have to disagree with you. First of all, LeBron wouldn't be trying to get an MVP at 35; he'd be trying at 37. He's
37.
actually older than that. But secondly, and this is what I think really matters, it's one thing to try to ramp yourself up, as a veteran team with a lot of championship experience when you have a lot of experience playing together. It's
Mhm.
another thing when you don't have the foundation built. So if that's something they're actively, I don't personally think it is. I think they've been struggling because they've been struggling. I think sometimes they haven't been urgent enough about how it's a weird thing. They need to play harder. I've spent a lot of time talking about how they have to play harder and they haven't played hard enough. But I don't necessarily think that they're unaware that they're not where they need to be. But the foundation isn't there yet. So if nothing else, that's going to be a really fascinating experiment to see, like, can you literally flip the switch with theoretically not nearly close to the foundation that's necessary when teams typically do that.
Mhm. Yeah, look, it's a fair thing, and I don't think the roster construction is entirely going to support what LeBron and Davis are, what I think they're going to end up becoming. And that's, that's a different conversation, I suppose. But I think LeBron and Anthony Davis and with that improvement from Russell Westbrook, I think you are going to see a much different Lakers team later on this season. And what they're going to hope is this is going to be enough. The 3, Westbrook, Davis, LeBron,
Mhm.
banding and raising their game is going to be enough.
Yeah,
And look,
the superstar version of those guys is what they're counting on, and just haven't gotten it.
And because they're all older and somewhat brittle, they have to do it a different way. So I don't know what their ultimate ceiling is going to be. I still don't think that they're a championship team, but hey, no one thought that the Suns were going to be in the finals, and you never know what's going to happen.
True.
I'm never going to doubt LeBron, even though he is more, like you said, he's not bulletproof anymore. But I think he's going to reach a level, and we'll see what happens there. So I think this, what I'm seeing from the Lakers, is it's worse than I thought, like in the moment. But when I pull back, I'm like, it's still not bad. Like it's just I'm putting that back burner. I'm like, let me check in with the Lakers again in a couple of months, because I look at the standings and they're 12-12. I'm like, oh, that's dangerous. That's dangerous that they're like, for all of the struggles that the Lakers have had, they really kind of needed to be like 8-16 for me to be like, ooh, they might have a
That's
problem. At
really
500 now.
if you break down the schedule, getting to 8 and 16 would have been a challenge.
I
But
mean, I am
they were
looking at
up, they looked like they were up for it at certain points. But no, look,
We'll see what happens.
that's what people hope. And
This Celtics game is going to be an important game for you guys,
Mhm.
because if it goes the way it went the last time, then you can take what I said and maybe be like, not tear it up, but like start the process.
at some point, the Lakers need to start showing the capability of beating decent teams.
Yeah.
They were at moral victory level against the Clippers on Friday, and the Clippers have their own issues. So, well, this was fun. This was our first real crossover You, of course, have done many of these. Veteran of the network, which is probably why the thing is green. Again, Lakers haterism
like LeBron
everywhere.
and pulling strings. I'm the one. You got to make that green or I'm out.
Nice.
But this is fun. We'll see how it goes on Tuesday night. John, thanks for doing this. This was fun.
Yeah, man. It was a lot of fun, guys. Appreciate it. All right, Kamenetzky brothers over there, Andy and Brian. Great conversation. Celtics Lakers on Tuesday night, 10 p.m. local time. TNT. It's going to be a great one. Celtics, if they do what they did in the last game, can come away with a big win, much needed win. So we'll see how it goes. I'll have it all covered for you. I will do a podcast after that game very early in the morning, so you can have it for you when you wake up and are ready to get going. So make sure you're subscribed to get it directly to your device. Subscribe on YouTube so you can get notified when I publish on YouTube, and share the podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.